GCSE maths topic by topic. We're going to have a look today at frequency diagrams. Frequency diagrams, cumulative frequency diagrams, which often people get confused between the two, and we'll have a look at some box plots, which remarkably are actually quite good fun. Fun? Maths? Right, okay, maybe not. But let's have a look at some sort of these frequency things and see what sort of things we're asked to find and work out. So let's go and have a look at this, and if I have a look at me pad, have a look and see what we're going to try and do with this. So we've got some basic data. Let's give ourselves some data, and we've got some information about I don't know, let's have some children, and we can have some simple data about them. So let's have number of children, and we can have either 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and this is going to be our frequency, and this is perhaps the number of children in families. So we'll have 10 families that have no children. We can have something like 40, I don't know, let's go for 42, my favourite number. Of here we've got this what with 1, 2, we're going to have 30, and then we'll have something like, I know, 14, and let's have 3, and let's have 5. It doesn't matter what we've got there really. Okay, so we asked so many families, and we'll need to count up how many families there are, and we want to find out various bits and pieces here. So the first job we've got is, let's work out how many people we asked this question of. And to do that, we're going to go into our calculator, and we're going to put those numbers in. So we're just going to have 10 plus 42 plus 30 plus 14 plus 3 plus 5, and we asked 104 families. So that's my data, and let's see what we can actually work out with this. Well, we could find various things, like they might ask you to work out, perhaps we've done that one, that's the number of total number of here of families we asked. If we want to work out the total number of children, so that's going to be 0 times 10, quite easy one, that one. 1 times 42, that's simply going to give me 42. 2 times 30, we're going to have 60 there. We're going to have 3 times 14. We're going to have 4 times 3, and we're going to have 5 times 5. And to work out then the total number of children, we would simply add those up. So let's go to the calculator and do that again. So we've now got 42 plus 60 plus another 42 plus 12 plus 25. Third one. Oh, right. So a total of 181 children here. Okay, so now someone might ask us, well, could you have worked out what the mean average number of children is going to be? Well, yeah, that's not too bad for us to work out, because we know we've got 181 children. We know we've got we've got 104 families, and so we can divide one number by the other. So here is our 181, and we're going to divide that by my previous answer, 104, and that gives me a lovely fraction. 181 over 104 was what I started with. Turn that in there to 1.74 children. So we've got an answer there of our mean average. Now, we could also be asked to try and plot this data, and we might come up with some sort of frequency diagram. Excuse me. Right, let's see what we can do with that. Now, if we're going to do that, we've got a choice. We can either do it on squared paper, or we can do it on graph paper. I'm just going to do a simple graph, so I think I'm just going to try and use some squared paper for this, because it's going to be easier for me to do that. So I've got my squared paper, and what do we want to try and represent on this? So I want to have basically the number of children along the bottom, and we're going to have our frequency going up the side. So let's try and draw this little diagram. So I've got my squared paper ready to go, and I've got my data. So I've got 0 to 5 going along the bottom, and going up the top we've got to go up to 42. Well, I don't think we're going to want to do this as an enormous graph here. So what we're going to do is each 2 is going to represent 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The last one I did 5. Well, that was simply because it's going to be easier to divide that up, and there's my bottom line. So we're going to have here 0 children, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. I'm only going to draw a small graph, and up the side let's label our numbers 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. So there's my graph with all my ready to put my data on. There's my data ready to come in, and so we've got here the first one is going to be a little bit too much. Let's bring there 0 and 10. So my first value is going to be there. My second one is going to be 1 and 42. So that's going to be that's 42.5, so that's about 42 is going to be about there. Then we've got 30, so 2 and 30. We're going to have 3 and 14. So there's going to be my 15 mark, so it's going to be a little bit lower than that. And then we've got 4, which is going to have 3. And the last one, 5. So there is my data. Or more precisely, there are my data. You may watch the briefings, and if you read and watch these briefings, they talk about data and they say about not there is some data to look at, but they correctly use the word there are data to look at. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to join these up with a straight line. And I think by pure luck, this nearly was a straight line through the whole lot. And there is my frequency diagram. And we've just joined up each of the points here with a straight line. So we've got here some sort of relationship. To complete this, we need to label our basically our diagram, our graph, to make sure that we've got here, so we know that this is number of children. On this side, I'm going to turn it round and I'm going to write frequency. In other words, how many of each one that we've got. And then I ought to give this whole graph a title. Number of children in 104 families, and that represents some sort of graph of that data. And I can put on here some other things like my mean average number of children, in other words the number of children, the average number of children per family, and that I worked out was 174. And there is my data. People ask, really, what might you actually use this for? You know, when would I actually use this? Well, some of these graphs actually do get used for various things. My wife, for instance, works in town planning, and she looks at population studies. She looks at the number of children that would be in a particular area, the number of children that might then be going to sort of perhaps school, and then she could work out the number of children that would be in a school, and she can work out therefore that they might need a new school being planned somewhere, or they might need a new hospital here with this population going up or that population going down. And you can represent some of those things with some of these graphs. We can also use this in business for various things. So this is a useful tool to have if you're going to end up probably in some sort of business, and most of us will. Let's try a different question and see how we get on with that one. See if we can consolidate some of these ideas. move that one out the way, and we'll bring in here, and we could have a look at something about perhaps hotels. Let's have some hotels. I'd like to think I was going to go on holiday this year, but I think with the COVID-19 we'll probably end up more likely in my back garden. Right, so let's compare some hotels. We've got Hotel A and we've got Hotel B, and the guests, when they come, are asked to score the hotels on a rating, and let's have this rating something rather big. Let's go for 1 to 5. So there's a possibility, I suppose they could give 0 as well, couldn't they? 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Yeah, as I usually do, I didn't plan my line quite long enough, and we'll do the same for this one. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and let's write down the number of people that thought these were wonderful. So 21 people thought this hotel was awful, whereas only 7 thought that one. We'll have 38 people thought this one, and 21 gave that a 1. I don't know, what should we go for? 49, 73. I'm just making these numbers up. And then we'll have only 6 people, 12 people, and let's have 25 people. And this one we had 98, 17, and we'll give this one a little bit of a anomaly, I suppose. Let's give this one 67. So I've got some data. Now let's have a look at this data to see what we've got. We need to have some idea of the total number of guests, so we can add up these to check on the number of guests, and we're going to work out the total number of guests, which is going to be multiplying these together. So 0 by 21 is going to give me 0, 1 by 38 is going to give me 38, and the rest of these are going to get harder for me to work out. So 2 49s are 98, 4 12s 48, and 6 5s are 30. I wish I'd chosen some nice numbers for the other one, but we've got 0, 21, 2 73s are going to give me 146. We've got 4 98s. Now the easiest way of doing that would be that's going to be 400 minus each 2, so that's going to be minus 2 4s are 8, so that's going to be 392. 7 3s are 21, and 6 3s are 18, plus those 2, which gives me 201. And then 5 17s, not particularly nice. 7 5s are 35, carried a 3, and then 1 5 is 5, plus the 3 gives me 8. So I've got my numbers, so we can now work out what the average is going to be, and we're going to work out the total here and there, and we can divide them and we can compare the averages. So let's do that. So work out my number of people in my hotel, it's going to be simply 21 plus 38 plus 49 plus 25 plus 12, finally plus 6, and that gives me a total here of 151 people. Now I'm going to want that number, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to store that in A. And I've written that down. Let's now work out the total number of guests staying, and so we're going to add up that column. So adding up that column, it's going to be 38 plus 98 plus 75 plus 48 plus 30. And that gives me 289. So our average score here is going to be 289 divided by my 151. Let's do that on the calculator. So that's going to be that number divided by, and I stored it, so let's just recall. So shift, recall A, there's my 151 coming in, and that gives us an average score of 1.91. Let's compare that with the other hotel, and for that one what we're going to have to do is add up this column. So in exactly the same way we're going to do our sum, which is going to be 7 plus 21 plus 73 plus 67 plus 98 plus 17, and that I'm going to store in memory B, and that is 283, so we can write that number down. So we've got more guests, and let's now work out what their score is going to be. So let's work out here. We've got 21 plus 146 plus 201 plus 392 plus 85, and that gives me 845, and we can do that sum of 845 divided by 283. So on the calculator I've got that number, and I want to divide that by shift, recall, memory B, and that gives me 2.98. And so that's giving me now this hotel as being the better hotel with my average. We could, if we were asked to, plot a frequency diagram of this, and we could plot them in different colours. But we're not going to try that. What we're going to try instead is we're going to go on and have a look at cumulative frequency. Now, how is cumulative frequency different? So let's have a look at what is cumulative frequency. We're going to have the same type of graphs here, but what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and work out some basic sort of other trends that we can actually do with playing with some of these. So let's have a little try of some cumulative frequencies, and let's have some data, and we'll have a look and see what we can do with this data. So what I want before we start here is some sort of questions that we can sort of work on and see what we can do. And let's have some students and some marks, and we'll see if we can work out what we're going to do with our students and our marks. Now this time I want a wider table to play around with, because I'm going to store more data in here. So we're going to have my marks, and the marks, these tend to be written, let's zoom in here right a long way, because what my mark might be is I'm going to score my student here between, let's say, 21, and that's going to be something like here, that's going to be less than X, and that's going to be less than equal to something like 30. And my next mark will run here from here, basically 30 to 40. I'll make that one 20. So any number that's here 20, above 20, but less than or equal to 30. So that's going to be 20 point something. So we're going to have a reasonable range here. So let's now just zoom out, and I can put a few more of these in. And I don't really want to go too mad on the numbers that we're going to have in here, because I've got to work them all out. But I want enough that I've got something that we can work out. So let's just do that one, perhaps up to 80. So we've got my marks. Now we're going to have the number of students who are going to do this particular test, and what grades they got. So only 5 got a grotty mark, we had 7 got there. We didn't have too many at the top though. We had, let's have 10 of those. 15 here. We've got 19 there, and 25 in the middle. So I've given myself a little spread of numbers that we can work out. I have no idea how many students we had here. Let's see if we can work out how many students. And this here is going to be what we call the cumulative frequency. So my first number is going to be 5. This one is going to be 5 plus 7, which is going to give me 12. The next one is going to be this number here, 12 plus 25, which is going to give me 37. My next one is going to be 37 plus 19, and that one is going to give me 56. This one here is going to be the 56 plus the 15, which is going to give me 71. And finally, I've got my 71 plus 10, which said that we had 81 children. So I've got my 5, 12, 37, 56, 71 and 81 to plot. So what we're now going to try and do is we're going to try and draw this as a cumulative frequency graph. I don't think the squared paper is going to sort of manage this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this on a piece of graph paper. So let's just tear a piece out and have a go at this. Right, let's have a look at our data. There, those numbers, and we've got the frequency. Now, if I have a look at this, the maximum grade this child could have got is a 30. The maximum this child here, or these children here, could have got was a 40. So what we're going to do is we're going to plot this number here against that number there. This number is going to go down the bottom, so we're going to go from 30 to 80, which is 6 numbers across, and this one's going to range from 5 to 81. So let's scale our diagram suitably with our graph paper. So I've got only to go across 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That looks reasonable scale on these things, to use a big one for that. And we've got to go up 8 to 1, so we could do that easily as if that's 10. So I can do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Right, so let me say that I've counted down there now. I've counted across. So now is a good time to try and draw this. I find a lot of students start drawing these things too early. They start drawing the lines and then try and measure the scales out on them. So I'll put my line up. Let's do my line across. And let's do the numbers across first. So these are going to be 20 to 30. So this value is going to be 30 here, 40, 50, 60, 70 and 80. I've got a good spread across from my graph, and then going up we've got, so this is here our marks, and what we've got on here is the cumulative frequency. And let's put in our cumulative frequency. So we're going to have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Now, I'm going to make a slight change to my data, and I'm going to be very naughty doing that, because I'm going to try and do this so we can work out some sums. So I'm going to change that last number, which you can't do, but I should have had a better question. And I'm going to change that to 9, so this is going to be 80. And you'll see why I've changed it in a minute, because it's going to make our maths later easier. So I've been awkward, I've changed my numbers just so I can make things fit nicely. So let's draw this out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the graph paper underneath, and that gives me these numbers so we can have a look and see what they're going to be. So my first number then for my 30 is going to be 5. So we can plot that on the graph. My next one for my 40 is going to be 12. My next one for my 50 is going to be 37. So 35, 37. My next one is going to be 56. So 50, 55, 56. Choosing a good scale makes life very easy. And then for 70 we're going to manage 71, and finally for 80 I'm going to get 80. And there I've got my data. Now this data I really want to try and draw with a nice curve. Some people can draw these freehand quite nicely. Other people find them easier to draw them with one of these curves that you can get from some shops. So I'm just going to draw this in here. Not quite right on that one. I don't like that. That wasn't quite what I wanted. Let's just try and draw that one in a little bit better. Put my X in again. Shows that it happens to the best of us. Not brilliant, but it'll do. Now I've got this cumulative frequency graph. What sort of things might I be asked to find from here? Well, our first thing that we might be asked to find here is what is the median. This is why I've changed my number, because this is then going to be, if I've got 80, it's going to be the 40th value. So to work out the 40th value, let's go across from my 40 and where it reaches that line, then what we're going to do is we're going to go down at that point. And near enough, that's going to give me 51. So let's put in my median, which is the 40th value, and that equals 51. Let's now be asked, what is the interquartile range? If I'm asked the interquartile range, then what I need to do is work out half of my 40. This is the lower quartile. This is where it's going to be 20. So let's put my ruler on. And we've got this value here. Let's just go and put it in as accurately as I can. And that looks like it's going to be 44. So if we put down here, we're going to work out our interquartile range. So my lower quartile is going to be, as we just worked out, 44. And I'm going to work out my upper quartile, and this will be then half of 40 to 80, which is going to give me the 0.60. And let's just plot this one down very quickly. I'm putting all my plotting lines in so that we've got everything so we can see what's actually happened, and that looks like to be 62.5. My interquartile range will be my upper quartile minus our lower quartile, so that's going to be 62.5 minus 44. Let's do that on the calculator. So cancel, and then we'll put in our 62.5, and I'm going to take away 44. And that's going to give me 18.5. So we've done our cumulative frequency graph, and we've got some answers. We've managed to work out our upper lower quartile. We can then take them away, work out our interquartile range. But we can do one other clever thing with this, and we can do a box plot. So let's have a look and do a box plot, but I'm going to cheat on my box plot. You see, I've already got my box plot already written. I've got my lower value, I've got my upper value, and I've got my median, and I've got my interquartile range. So let's do those, and I'm going to take my graph here and I'm going to draw my interquartile range and everything else down here. So let's just draw that line in there. There's my median. There we are. Let's now draw up my box. And you see it's all lining up nicely with the data. I don't know what my lowest value is. I know somewhere between 20 and 30. I know it's got to be somewhere in this range. I don't know where. The data doesn't help me, so I can't put in that value. I could hazard a guess. It's going to be somewhere about 25, but I don't know because this data doesn't give it to me, and I don't know that someone actually managed to get the top mark. Well, they could have. Probably best, if I was trying to do this, then I would actually assume that the lowest mark could actually be 20 if I was given this, and that's how I would probably want to play this. Rather than to make an average, I'd like to assume that my lowest mark could have possibly have been 20, because we weren't given any more data. And by looking at this, we can see what we've got for each of these, and I can mark in from my answers that I had before. I can put in my numbers of 44, 51 and 62.5 if I want to make life easy for people to read what they are. So there's a box plot. I've managed to achieve then a frequency diagram, sometimes called a frequency polygon, and you can draw those as bar charts if you really want to, or it's better to try and draw them with the lines. We've then done the data and added those together to make a frequency diagram. We've drawn this out and we've managed to extract the median. We've managed to pull out the interquartile range, and from that we've managed to also achieve a box plot. Generally not popular between these because students have a problem trying to remember what they're actually trying to achieve. Sometimes trying to do these frequency polygons, they forget they want to sometimes go, especially if you've got one of these ranges like we had before. Then if you've got one of these ranges, then you might need to take the middle value. Whereas when we're doing cumulative frequency, we're always taking the end value. Usually when you do cumulative frequency, you will get nice numbers. When you do this for real, in a real job, of course, you won't have nice numbers. But then you've got a calculator, and so that can sort of work that out. And you can find that spreadsheets will do much of this work for you. That's what they're designed for. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you've discovered that some of these aren't really as bad as they look. I quite like doing the box plots because once I've done the cumulative frequency diagram, doing a box plot from that is quite easy. You won't get that, of course. You'll get horrible questions, but that's life. So if you found this useful, please subscribe, and I'll see you next week when we'll do some more GCSE maths, topic by topic. Bye bye, take care.